Welcome to your Public Works and Gang Reduction Committee. I'm joined by my colleagues, Councilmember Buscaino and O'Farrell. I expect Ms. Martinez to join us shortly, as well as Mr. Roop. We're going to get started, though. And at some point, I'm going to ask us to take items 4 and 7 through 11 on consent, but we have public comment cards on multiple items, and so I would like to take those first. Starting, we have two people who have comments on the last group of items, so if I could have Allison Saunders followed by Derek Barton come forward. And you have 2 minutes to talk about you each signed up for 3 items, and for multiple items, usually we do 1 minute per item, but when there's multiple items, we just do 2 minutes for the entirety of those items.
2 minutes for the entire, is this on?
You can break it up any way you like, but it'd be
I actually only have one item. I didn't realize that they were different streets, so I couldn't read the whole thing when I was signing it, so I only have one item.
Okay, well you can, go ahead.
Okay, yeah. Thank you. Good afternoon. My name is Allison Saunders. I am the president of the California Country Club Homes Association, a homeowners association of over 400 homes. A recent survey of our constituent homeowners revealed that security is the #1 concern of all residents in our HOA. The biggest issue we've faced in the last number of years has been the increase in property crimes, including home invasions and drug use in our midst. We have stepped up private security patrols, but there's a limit to what patrols can achieve. Our community was established over 70 years ago when today's level of homelessness and lawlessness was unimaginable. Access to communities was easy. The 10 freeway was just being built. Times change, times have changed. We can no longer be the open society we once were without consequences. When Edith Street cul-de-sac was closed, crime dropped on that street. Unfortunately, crime increased on both Woodbine and Philo, the 2 adjacent cul-de-sacs. While I understand the convenience that may be lost to those who you will hear from later who live outside of our HOA and enjoy walking through our neighborhood, my concern as president of our HOA must be the safety and security of our homeowners. Closing Woodbine won't make those living outside our HOA any more or less safe, but it will make our residents more safe. Our request is a simple one, but one that will have profound consequences in terms of reducing fear and increasing a sense of security among our residents. Most of our residents couldn't make it today. They're at work or still away on their summer vacation, but quite a number of them have given me their testimony in support of the closure, and I would like to be able to submit that today for your consideration. I hope you will honor our request.
Absolutely. Please submit it for the record and to the clerk. Go ahead. And then our next speaker is Derek Barton, I assume?
Yes, thank you for the opportunity, but sometimes you got to realize that some people say it best and there's no way to improve upon it. So I agree with what Allison said.
Wonderful. Okay. Great. And then we have Mr. Eric Previn, who has signed up for every single item. Mr. Previn, you have 2 minutes. Welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Bloomfield. Technically, that's not accurate. I don't think I did, but I did sign up for a number of items, and I appreciate that. You don't have to call them. I'll introduce them as I go. But the Public Works group it's big. It's there's 5 divisions. There's Bureau of Street Services, Bureau of Engineering, and today I believe they're submitting 2 of their annual reports on agenda. But there's no new information other than the report at outset. And thank you, Mr. James, who's here. In fact, you have a number of the commissioners here, which is exciting. Maybe they're going to give a report. But I wanted to give a little report on the BOE, who work diligently. It doesn't describe that they work so diligently on Prop K, but they do. And Prop K was a 1996 voter-approved initiative, and they have been working diligently, but it has not necessarily been in the interest of the public because they have been doing something we like to call minimum requirementalism in the business, which is they noticed Studio City and the environs in the most modest and minimized way possible of a pending project that now is percolating along and is being trotted out for Prop 68 money, for other water bond money to inflate the size of a small recreation center to a giant high school regulation basketball court on the open space in the field, which obviously is a devastating blow to the residents when they find out, but we're having a very hard time because BOE under Neil Drucker and some of the folks in that group, Prop K, have been just simply refusing to share the plans, which is bad. It's very, very bad because it breeds a kind of distrust. Last night we had National Night Out on the very beautiful open space where this monstrosity is being planned, and yet nobody really knows about it. So there's like a hushed feeling. Krikorian came out, Mike Fuhrer came out, Ron Galperin came out. I feel that we're facing kind of like a standoff on this land about whether or not we want a big, hyper platinum leads giant structure experiment for people to cut ribbons at, or we want to keep our park, our lovely neighborhood park, the way it has been. Now I know that I'm about 1 second away, and then I have a general public. Would you like me to do that as well? Or you want to do general public comment later?
Generally do it at the end, but you're only general public comment speaker, so if you'd like to go now.
I'd like to, and then if you don't mind, and I'll be very brief, I'll just take the 1 minute, and thank you.
Go ahead.
I just want to say, how important it is that we behave as local officials as the best we can, being honest and truthful. And whereas I adore Paul Caretz, and I know you adore, we all adore Paul Caretz, and all of us are co-adoring the animals together and everything like that. We're aligned on many things. But one thing we're not aligned on is the origin of the Skirball fire. And myself and some reporters wrote a piece about that because there was a lot of smoke and confusion and hysterical media reaction, and it got out into the ether that it was caused by a homeless encampment fire. Now, I'm here testifying that that was not true. It was not a homeless encampment fire. In fact, the LA Fire Department, who was charged, the arson division, with making those determinations, made a preliminary determination, then backed way away from it because they realized, oh, we have nothing. That was not the actual stove. This is not. And yet, public officials like Caretz and Catherine Barger from Supervisorial District 5, so on the fives, I'm going to bring this up, until they back away from the false attribution. Thank you, Mr. Bloomfield.
Thank you very much. So, colleagues, I would like to, unless there's an objection, to move item 4 and items 7, 8, 9, 10, and 11 on consent. No objection. That'll be the order. Those are approved. So next we will go to item number 1 and 2. I'd like to take those items together. Mr. Espinosa, would you read those into the record?
Item number one is a Board of Public Works report relative to the Department of Public Works annual report for the fiscal year 2017-18, and number 2 is the Public Works annual report for fiscal year 2016-17.
Great. Now, we have a large Department of Public Works folks here today. I want to invite you to the platform, to the podium. Thank all of you for being here today. And Mr. James, I assume you'll kick it off, and you can bring up.
I will, yes, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
We don't have a giant table. We just have the one podium. So.
Right. So we'll take turns, and we'll do our best to choreograph it well for you, sir.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you to the committee members. On behalf of the Board of Public Works, we are pleased to report on the Department of Public Works fiscal year. The oral report this afternoon will be on 2017-18, the most recent that we have in print, of course. It covers and provides an overview of the large range of services, programs, and resources that we use to deliver public services to more than 4 million city residents, 1.4 million housing units, nearly 500,000 businesses, 7,300 miles of streets, 67, depending on how you define those, 6,700 miles of sewers, about 700,000 street trees, and over 200,000 street lights. The report covers all 5 bureaus and the divisions within the Board of Public Works. I'll spend just a moment on the board offices, and then we will hear from contract administration, then from engineering, then sanitation, then street lighting, then street services, and then our Vice President, Commissioner Cabello, will wrap it up, and then if you have any questions, we'll, of course, answer your questions. Just a couple of highlights on the board offices. One of the divisions, of course, is the Office of Community Beautification. Our head of Community Beautification, Paul Roch, is here. As you know, we have these discussions every year during the budget process. It is our goal to not only increase the service levels for graffiti abatement, and their assistance to community cleanups around the city, but also to increase those service levels each year. Our Petroleum Management and Natural Gas Safety Office, Udoa Kentuck, our petroleum administrator, is here as well. That office, which is still fairly new, created by your council and the mayor's office, now manages and oversees 23 oil fields in the city, 40 franchise agreements, and of course recently released the health study report that will be the subject of great discussion. And finally, at the board offices, the Film and Television Production Office that was established and set up by Mayor Garcetti along with the assistance of the council to work in bringing film production back, which we are seeing in many different areas of the entertainment industry, such that we actually see a dip most recently in motion picture film production, because TV is so high, is so increased because of the tax credit, that soundstage space is taken up. We're working to alleviate that problem, but there's an increase in jobs across the board. Finally, we also serve as the contract administrator of Film LA, which is our contractor for issuing the on-location permits in the public right-of-way, 18,000 on-location permits last year for filming. So with that, thank you for your time and attention this afternoon, and we'll start with contract administration and Chris Smith.
Great. And before we do that, I want to, for the record, note that Councilmember Rue has joined us. Please go ahead.
Good afternoon, Honorable Chair, committee members. My name is Chris Smith. I'm the Assistant Director of the Bureau of Contract Administration. I'll be presenting the report today for Mr. Reamer, who's on a well-deserved vacation. The Bureau of Contract Administration serves as a public witness to protect the city's interests. We do that through a staff of dedicated inspectors and compliance officers who ensure quality work, opportunity for employees and employers, and compliance with city standards. In 17-18, we've done that through some of the following achievements. Under quality, sidewalk repair program, our inspectors inspected our certified 127,248 linear feet of sidewalk rehabilitation. Under special permits, we conducted 78,290 permits within a day of their calling for inspection. Under opportunity, we awarded over $108 million in contracts to local business enterprises. Under project labor agreement, we've exceeded all the project labor agreement goals, including achieving 37% local hire of local residents, which 30% is the goal, 63% for local apprentices, 50% is the goal, 15% for transitional workers, 10% is the goal. More importantly, in those 33 projects covered under the project labor agreements, we've been able, valued at about $738 million, we've been able to reinvest $6.4 million back into the communities through wages and benefits that those employees received. Under compliance, under prevailing wage, the Office of Contract Compliance collected over $562,000 in restitution for contractor employees on city construction contracts. Under living wage, the city collected $1.7 million in restitution for contractor employees that provide services or lease property from the city. Our Office of Wage Standards, in enforcing the minimum wage, collected $552,876.96 in restitutions, fines, and penalties, recovered 104,973 paid leave sick hours for workers in the city. The work of our dedicated staff is ever moving toward our goal of making lives better as we make things better, and we thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Mr. Chair, if I could indulge you for just a moment, I neglected to mention initially, our city engineer, Gary Lee Moore, was planning to be here to provide the report from engineering, but he wanted me to share with you the unfortunate news that one of our engineering employees earlier this morning was hit by a Brinks truck at 11th and Hill. Gary, our city engineer, is currently at the hospital where our engineering employee is undergoing surgery. So obviously, all of our thoughts and prayers are with him and his family and the Bureau of Engineering at this time regarding this horrible accident that occurred this morning. Julie Souter will provide the report for engineering instead.
Great, thank you. And our thoughts and prayers are with him as well.
Good afternoon, Julie Souter for the Bureau of Engineering. The Bureau of Engineering is the lead city agency for planning, design, and construction management for public buildings, infrastructure, and open space for the city of Los Angeles. For this year of 17-18, the Bureau of Engineering awarded over $149 million project, or 136 projects representing over $426 million for the fiscal year 17-18. As you know, the bridge housing is one of the most important programs for the city of Los Angeles, and in that fiscal year 17-18, we're happy to report that the Bureau of Engineering, as the lead agency, completed 2 of our bridge home projects, and we currently have 6 under construction. Unfortunately, as President James mentioned, that Gary is out today, so our report is a little abbreviated, and be more than happy to follow up with any of you with any questions on our annual report for Public Works. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Eva Sung with LA Sanitation and Environment. LA Sanitation and Environment manage the city's clean water, solid resources, watershed protection, and environmental quality program with the mission to protect public health and the environment. Some highlights of the fiscal year 17-18 LA San numbers are: LA San completed 690,724 bulky item pickup by the next collection date. We cleaned 6,870 miles of sewer and 95,561 catch basins in the year. 320 million gallons of wastewater were cleaned each day through the 4 LA San water reclamation plants. In July 2017, 66,000 customers were transitioned into the recycler program with a goal of diverting 90% of solid waste going to landfills by 2025. 2021 low-impact development projects were approved by LA Sanitation and installed around the city. 10,201 tons of illegal dumpings were removed in the year. And also 2,185 tons of solid waste were removed from the homeless encampment cleanups. The LA Sanitation 24/7 Customer Care Center received 2,800 average daily calls, and the average customer wait time was 2.62 minutes. Thank you. And if you have any questions, I'm here. I'll be happy to answer it. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Norma Sahakian, Executive Director for the Bureau of Street Lighting. The Bureau of Street Lighting oversees the design, construction, and maintenance of over 220,000 streetlights. So I'm going to give you a brief summary of some of our activities and programs for fiscal year 17-18. We converted 7,534 streetlights to LED, and during that year we were about 90% compliant in the city. Currently we're about 95%. We also converted 5,034 high voltage streetlights to low voltage, and those were also LED. We installed 1,374 new streetlights. We also deployed 15,702 remote monitoring units, which are the units at the top of the poles that gives us the status of the streetlight. And we also installed 50 electrical vehicle charging stations that were attached to our streetlights throughout the city. Currently, we have 282 citywide. We also converted 101 tunnels to LED for energy savings and to basically bring it to a white light, increased lighting standards. And a new program that we started that year, we worked on mid-block crosswalks where we looked throughout the city to basically increase the lighting or install new lighting for those mid-block crosswalks at 75 locations. That's my report. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Good afternoon. Adel Hashkali, General Manager of Streets LA, Bureau of Street Services. This is for 1718 Streets LA, and the workers in Streets LA, women and men of Streets LA, are committed to enhancing the quality of life for all. We're committed to making our streets safe, mobile, and sustainable. I want to give a report on the accomplishments that we did in 1718. We completed 2,400 lanes of street preservation, including paving and slurry. We raised our street network index for our street pavement to 68. And I want to tell you, this is also last year we did it to 70, and hopefully 72 coming up. We responded to close to 11,003 emergencies in less than 1 day average. The total trees trimmed were about 35,000. And that was the last year we did it with contractors. With the help of the chair, we changed that to city forces. And last year was done with city forces. This year is being done with city forces and continue to do the work. The street pothole, we're responding to the pothole request on 311 with an average of 2.3 working days. Neighborhood council initiatives, the neighborhood council blitz. Each neighborhood council gets 2 days a year for specific full day service that we do. And this coming year, we're going to do it also both in pothole and in tree planting. Also, the sweeping, we actually accomplished 98% of the posted street sweeping routes. And we've completed close to 350,000 square feet of concrete sidewalks, and which is part of the sidewalk program repair. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Good afternoon. Paul Roch, Director of the Office of Community Beautification, just with a couple quick highlights from fiscal year 2017-18. As you know, OCB contracts with several nonprofit community-based organizations to provide services on a citywide basis. In 17-18, those contractors removed over 28 million square feet of graffiti from 439,000 locations citywide. 84% of the requests that were submitted through the city's 311 system were addressed within 48 hours or less in terms of graffiti abatement. The OCB contractors also provide public right-of-way cleanup. In that year, they cleaned 8,085 locations of weeds, litter, and loose debris from along the public right-of-way, collecting a total of 118,000 bags of the debris, as well as over 11,000 discarded items that they came across along the public right-of-way as well. In terms of support for volunteer events in 2017-18, OCB supported 320 events, which involved 20,700 volunteers. These volunteers on a citywide basis provided over 88,000 hours of volunteer service, collecting over 56,000 bags of trash and providing a value to the city of $2.5 million in volunteer hours. OCB continues to work with community volunteers and nonprofit agencies in order to keep the city beautiful. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Paul. The all-star cast of Public Works. We keep getting all the greats coming up. I love it. So,
Honorable Chair and committee members, Uduak Jointuk, City Petroleum Administrator, giving some highlights from the last 2 years. Our office administers the pipeline and petroleum function here in the city. We deal with everything from the exploration and production of petroleum, oversight of underground pipelines, oil fields, petroleum refineries, drilling leases, and gas storage facilities within the city of LA. We grew from a staff of 1. We now have 5 members in the Office of Petroleum Administration and Natural Gas. We have been involved in various projects. We helped close escrow on the Taylor Yard acquisition, doing the pipeline assessment for that project. We've been involved in zoning hearings, such as the Jefferson drill site or at the Rancho Park drill site in West LA. We also have generated a number of reports to the council on terminating oil districts in District 1, on annual inspection program that's under development, and also an inventory of oil and gas wells in the city for the first time in several decades. We currently have 45 pipeline franchises. We brought in $21.3 million this past year. $17 million of that is from our natural gas franchise. The other $4.5 million are from oil franchises, and about $240,000 in electric franchises. And then we've also restored our oversight capacity at the Baldwin Hills Inglewood oil field by there's always been a place for us on the Community Standards District, and so we've now been granted that oversight role. So just giving some brief highlights and happy to take questions if there are any.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Cecilia Cabello, Vice President, Board of Public Works. I'd first like to thank the committee, Chairman Blumenfield, and all the council members for your leadership and for having us here today. And as you've heard today, our department has really achieved some remarkable milestones this fiscal year. I'd also like to thank the almost 6,000 employees we have in the Department of Public Works for their tireless efforts to enhance the quality of life for all Angelenos, and acknowledge and thank all of my fellow commissioners for being here today, all-star cast, as Chairman Blumenfield said. And we are now ready for your questions. We have all our bureau representatives, our board office representatives, and our executive officer, Dr. Fernando Campos, here to take any questions the committee may have. Thank you.
Great, thank you so much. And obviously this is a great report. I mean, you guys have done amazing things in showing the difference between the 2 years. Looking at the report, we see how it's been a year of growth and improvement. We could spend hours and hours and hours going over all the fine points. In fact, that's what we generally do during Budget Committee, and I don't want to repeat that today because we have a long agenda. So maybe I'll just throw one general question out for Mr. James or whoever wants to answer it, which is just generally, compared to last year, what was the biggest challenge that we had to overcome, and how do you feel we did that, and what do you think is the big challenge for the department coming up in this new year that we'll either see in the budget? It doesn't have to be budget related, but that we need to know about, because the stats and what the department does really speaks for itself, but just wanted to get your sense of where you think the challenges are coming and where how you think we've dealt with them.
Well, there are a few, but I'll try and keep it brief with the number of bureaus that we have. But a couple of significant challenges where we've made great progress. The Recycla program, Mr. Chair, as you will recall, initial rollout is you're always going to have challenges when you change a trash hauling program like we did in the city of Los Angeles to gain the environmental and the labor benefits for the employees that work in that industry that we obtained, and of course the environmental benefits for the entire region. That whole program has completely stabilized service-wise. So that's where I see some of the greatest accomplishment. In the same bureau, talking about LA Sanitation, there are, as you all know, because as you sit as policymakers, significant challenges and discussions that are happening around the process and the procedure for encampment cleanup that sanitation does in consultation with a number of our outside partners, as well as the LAPD. Another area where we've made significant progress, two that I would like to mention, actually three briefly. We are setting records for recent times with our pavement condition index through Streets LA, the Bureau of Street Services. It's amazing work that they've done. Keith Mose is here, who's in charge of that at Streets LA. Also, street lighting, you've seen incredible use of new technology that's very exciting around street lighting. And at contract administration, a number of things, whether it's partnering with businesses to implement the new minimum wage, that partnership has been very successful. The metrics around inclusion of minority business enterprise, women business enterprise, small business enterprise, those numbers are getting to the level that in many areas they're now getting to the exciting point. And I would just mention, even though it's not in the fiscal year that we're talking about, we were very excited this year, of course, to work with your leadership and the leadership of the city to bring Los Angeles to what has been now the national forefront because of the national stories on LGBTQ certification for the Department of Public Works and the contracts that we let out. So those are just a few of the things I would add to answer your question, sir.
Great. Thank you very much. Any additional questions or comments? Mr. O'Farrell.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chair. And Thank you to all the bureaus who made this report. You know, aside from fire and police, Public Works and the various bureaus are the most relevant of all city departments or agencies, I think, to the neighborhoods. And this comprehensive report speaks to that and all of the work that went into this in fiscal years 27 and 2017, 2018. There have been some changes since then, so perhaps in terms of sanitation and maybe under the category of programs, events, efforts, the next report could reflect some of the concerns with single-use plastics. For example, we have the straws upon request only, and sanitation has done an incredible job with reports that led to that decision-making, and we have some more decisions to make about single-use plastics probably in the very near future. And so I think the report could probably reflect those environmental policies moving forward as well, because that's part of the story about how Los Angeles is helping lead the way in terms of phasing out single-use plastics. And even the plastic bag ban that has been in place now for many, many years could be reflected in future reports. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Buscaino.
Thank you. I too want to echo Mr. O'Farrell's comments. Just a deep respect and appreciation for the work this Bureau continues to do day in and day out. Clearly in the city of LA, work does not go unnoticed, as we're seeing a number of more streets being paved. I want to recognize the mayor, the city council, specifically the budget committee, for moving on prioritizing dollars to fix our infrastructure on all corners of the city. I do want to recognize Adele, as when you came before this committee on your appointment from Mayor Garcetti, I struggled with it because of the lack of communication and coordination between street services and DOT. I know Ms. Reynolds is here today. I think I saw her. Is Salita here? Oh, there you are. And the issue that I raised was every time we're paving a street, we're not getting the lines painted quick enough. In my district, we're seeing significant amount of streets being repaved, and we're also seeing the coordination now with DOT and Ms. Reynolds' shop with getting those lines painted quicker. I'd like to see it a little bit more expedited, but it's a lot better, and we're not waiting months before our lines are painted after a street's paved. So I appreciate that collaboration, coordination. I still feel that both departments needs to be under one shop, but that's maybe for another agenda item on another day. So Bureau of Engineering, I'd just like to call up the representative on BOE, if you don't mind, Mr. Chair. Specifically the issue of a bridge home. Now, we have taken and heeded the call of Mayor Garcetti's Bridge Home program, which I full-heartedly support and embrace. In fact, I have 3 of these sites coming online in my district, one in Wilmington, one in Watts, and one in San Pedro. The one in Watts is over 50% completed. We can't build these things quick enough. For me, the driving force of a bridge home is primarily to get these souls off the streets and sidewalks and into a bridge home. And secondly is to be able to enforce and clean or enforce 5611, enforce the ordinances that we have in the books, and also be able to clean our streets. What can we do to move quickly or more fast on building these bridge homes? How can we circumvent the check the box, the bureaucratic permitting of a bridge home? We're not building the Grand Hotel here.
Right. I would be more than happy to have our program manager come back and report to you, but I know as part of the executive team of the Bureau of Engineering, this is one of the items that is number 1 on our agenda whenever we meet as an executive team. And collectively, we support our Chief Deputy City Engineer, Deborah Weintraub, who is leading the bridge home, in whatever way that we can support her and the program, whether it be from our clean water program, our streets program, or mobility program. We are all there to support the program. I also know that there is a dashboard, a collective effort within all of the city family, all the agencies, that we can have a to leverage our technology to provide that seamless coordination and communication in identifying where the ball is, where is the ball in court. And along with that, along with leveraging our technology and the communication, is looking really at our toolbox. As you mentioned, what are the various tools that we have for project delivery, and not just relying on one of the traditional methods, but really looking outside of the box, being creative in, really efficiently accelerating the program. And so, although I'm not working on the program, I do know that there is a concerted effort.
I respect the position, but it was clearly a bureaucratic answer. And with all due respect, I have an issue in San Pedro. My bridge home site is ready to go.
Okay.
Permits are done, ready to roll. We got the sign off from all levels of government. Yes, including the Federal Highway Trust something. But if we're going to treat this as an emergency, it seems like in the one in San Pedro, I have to triage because we've seen an increase of encampments in and around Beacon Street. So with that said, knowing that the site is ready today, the Caltrans lot on North Beacon, how soon can we get the Bridge Home site up?
And I'll be happy to have our Chief Deputy report to you.
Thank you.
There was just a state law which will help a little bit with CEQA on some of these bridge homes that was just passed. Not going to help with yours, but will help with the future ones. Mr. Rue.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I just want to echo a lot of my colleagues' statements. And first and foremost, I want to say I am overall very much pleased, if not impressed, with the overall work of the Public Works, the entire department. When it, Bureau of Sanitation, I know we had a very, very rough start with the whole Recicla program, but I think they really stepped up and fixed a lot of the problems. And going forward, I'm very excited all the additional recycling programs, especially the food waste and all the different additions that's going to come forward so we could become a zero-waste city. So I'm very excited about that. Bureau of Street Lighting has been tremendously helpful, working overtime. So has Bureau of Engineering. And in particular, not that I have a favorite because I think all the public works divisions are great, but street services has been really phenomenal. And it's everybody in our committee has been working for. I'm so excited that we finally included all the withdrawn streets and alleyways, that we now have a program and monies allocated to fixing our failed streets that were, quite frankly, we just gave up on them before. But now we have a program to fix DNF streets, as well as concrete streets. It's going to take a while, but now that the fact that we actually have a concerted program to start tackling it is a great, great fifth step. So I'm very excited about that. And of course, the urban forestry, who has been decimated over the years, we finally, we can't work miracles yet, but we finally backfilled a lot of staff because I'm going to be expecting a lot from urban forestry because we do need to, and I think all of our committee members know the importance of our tree canopy and our urban forestry for a variety of reasons that I don't have to state here. But we still do have a long way to go. I am very encouraged by our team at the entire Public Works Department and our commissioners, led by President Kevin James. But, and I want to echo the frustrations that we all have when we're tackling the homeless issue, especially for bridge housing, where we do get caught up. And I don't want to just single out Bureau of Engineering because sometimes it's DWP. It's you name it, and it's about, and I think that's why we've been talking at length, and whether it's the Fuse fellow who did the study about how to make it more efficient, or whether it's the Office of Construction Coordination that I've been trying to push ever since 4 years ago, where we all work together. So it's a process that we still need to go forward on, so we could better streamline permanent supportive housing, as well as Mayor's Bridge Home programs. And, there's a lot more for Bureau of Street Lighting. We still aren't done yet, updating all of our street lights, and that's something we need to get done sooner than later. Recicla, like I said, has done a great job, but there's still complaints that come in, but for the most part, we need to make sure we resolve them quickly. But overall, I'm very impressed. I look forward to the next year. We have, because we hit so many benchmarks, there's a lot more work for all of us to do. But I'm thankful for the presentation, and I think it's a job well done.
Thank you. Now, these are note and file items, but before we close and move to that, we had another person sign up for public speaking on this. So I'll bring up Mr. Wayne from Encino. He's also signed up for 12 different items, so we'll give you 2 minutes for this item and for all other items. Mr. Spindler?
Yes, sir. So, again, I always like to come with my favorite picture of America's Most Wanted. That's right. So, yes, as you're seeing, Kevin James and the failure of the James administration is on display fully for all you foes. More and more money and less results. Yes. And then you look at these council clowns right now, they can barely get 3 asses in those seats. There's supposed to be 5, but there's only 3. And they're just sitting there busy talking about nothing but bullshit in the middle of a business meeting. That's right. And that's the history of this building. So you see, I'm going to let the Honorable Mike Fuhr address the remainder of my 1 minute. Mr. Fuhr, go ahead.
Stick to the items on. Stick to
the
items on the agenda.
I am. I'm talking about all of the other items, Mr. Blumenfield. You're a stinking greedy Jew like myself, so
If you don't stick to the items, you've forfeited your time.
We're here to get the pork in the budget
You're not
involving
speaking about the
public
items.
works. You're not
speaking about the items. This is your last warning.
This is about the public works
Your time is done.
budget, right?
Your time is done.
Is it?
Your time is done. Please leave. Okay. We will take up items 1. I don't have you signed up. We're not at that item, sir. This is item number 1, which is the Public Works Report. Please do not interrupt from the audience. We have you signed up at the appropriate time. You did not sign up for this item. This is item 1 and 2. No more outbursts, please. Okay, item 1 is a note and file. Without objection, we will note and file. Seeing no objection. Item 2, same. Seeing no objection. That takes us to item number 3. Mr. Espinosa, would you please read that into the record?
Item number 3 is joint report from the Bureau of Engineering, Los Angeles Department of Transportation, Bureau of Street Services, and Bureau of Sanitation relative to the second round of corridors for the Complete Streets program. This has also been referred to the Energy, Climate Change, and Environmental Justice Committee and the Transportation Committee.
Great. Ms. Saunter, if you could provide us a brief overview of where we are today with the Complete Streets program and the item before us.
Good afternoon. Before we get into our report regarding the Complete Streets program and the discussion on the second round of streets, I'd like to just give you a little bit of an overview on where we are with our current streets for the Complete Streets program. So currently, with our program, we have one project that has been completed. As soon as we can log that up. And while they're pulling that up, I'd just like to acknowledge that this is a really great program, that it highlights the partnership that we have with our Department of Transportation, who's here today, our department or our Bureau of Street Services, Bureau of Sanitation, as well as our Bureau of Contract Administration. So here we have our program. it's up on the screen. So one of the first projects that we have, which is completed, are Roscoe Boulevard. It is a $2.3 million project, or mile project. It's $6.7 million and was completed in this past June. Some of the major accomplishments for the project is really highlighting the resurfacing, which was done by our contractor, Bureau of Street Services, signal installation and crosswalks, which you see here, including our new crosswalks, which in the yellow is our continental style crosswalks. Other improvements that you will be seeing on Roscoe Boulevard is the improvement of sidewalks, bringing them up to ADA compliance, and part of that is curb ramps. As part of the project, we preserved 31 trees and replaced 4. Another project that is currently in construction is our Temple Boulevard project. It is a $6.9 million project. It is a 2.4 mile stretch of Temple Boulevard. And again, the scope of work is resurfacing, signal, vision zero treatments. And so this is some of the improvements that you see here, which is upgrading our curb ramps. If you can see, there is, with the new ADA compliance, you're going to see a lot of the improvements really extending beyond the actual sidewalk and getting into our streets. And here, as you can see, some of the curb ramps of the constructions are getting a lot more complex than we have done in the past. You'll see some of the non-workable surfaces and making sure that our truncated domes and our crosswalks are all brought up to ADA compliance. Sorry. So here, that is Temple Boulevard. And the Temple Boulevard will be completed in September of this year. Lastly, we have our Venice Boulevard, which is currently in construction. It is a 2.8 mile stretch of street, and it is a $10.3 million program. And again, this is being constructed by our Bureau of Street Services in conjunction with Department of Transportation and Sanitation. And this project will be, you'll see some work that is ongoing, which is a lot of, again, sidewalk upgrade, curb ramps, and also street tree preservation. This project is slated to be completed by the end of this year. So just wanted to give a quick overview of what we're doing for our first inaugural year of the Complete Streets program. So here today, we are here to discuss the report, and this is really on the second round of the Complete Streets program. So what we are seeking is the authorization for the pre-design of the new Complete Streets. With our first program, we really hit the ground running in looking at fixing our pavement as well as implementing Vision Zero treatments. As the program has evolved, we really are looking at a more holistic approach on how we deliver Complete Streets program. And so as part of that, as we embark into our second round, we really want to codify and get a very clear understanding as far as what will be included in the scope of the Complete Streets program. And included in the report is an itemized list of what we consider base tenets of our program, which is reconstruction, Vision Zero, sidewalk repair, and green infrastructure. We also wanted to identify other elements that are opportunities, leveraging some of the projects here. And as part of the pre-design, we would look at these items and we would move forward, if funding is available, to be able to deliver those additional items. The second item that we are here for today is to receive authorization, understanding that the design and planning process will take some effort, that we wanted to be able to move forward with the pre-design of 3 of the streets that were identified in this 1920 budget. Those 3 streets are Culver Boulevard, La Brea Avenue, and Highland. And these streets were selected to have advanced pre-design and planning for 3 major reasons. First of all, these are streets that have Vision Zero treatments that are well recognized, and that we believe that there is going to be strong support from the community in moving forward. Secondly, the Department of Transportation has already done some preliminary design and believe that this will lend itself for being able to move forward with the project. And lastly, as I mentioned earlier, Bureau of Street Services, is our contractors and partners, they're going to be finishing up the first round of the 6 streets. And by the end of the year, we would, by moving forward with these 3 projects, it would give us the flexibility of being able to provide our Bureau of Street Services a steady workflow of projects. So with that, this report is recommending that we move forward with a pre-design for Culver, La Brea, and Highland Avenue. Also, as part of this report, we are recommending that we report back to the committee on where we are with the pre-design report, and with that have an estimated budget that we can receive authorization to move forward with a more formal design. And lastly, as part of the instructions, we will report back on the advanced planning and prioritization of the remaining 9 streets that were identified in the 1920 budget documents. With that, we have representatives from all of the other departments and bureaus for any additional questions.
Great. Thank you. Start out with a couple questions. Have there been any funding requests to Metro for transit improvement elements that would be included in a complete streets project?
Not a formal request that has been made to Metro, no.
Is that something that we plan on doing in the future?
Yes, as part of our planning documents, one of the items that we are doing is looking at the nexus of Metro projects that overlap with our 12 projects, as well as those that are going to be prioritized as part of our scoring system. And so that coordination with Metro is one of the items that we'll be looking at, as well as grant opportunities and, as you mentioned, reaching out to Metro for funding support.
Right. So always, anytime we can leverage more funds
Yes.
to make the street more complete, that's obviously a major goal. Will secondary scope elements be recommended for projects on a case-by-case basis, or how will that work?
So what the process would be is we would include the secondary items as part of our pre-design report. And so we would basically have a checklist of all of the items that we are going to be looking at in the base scope and the secondary items. And when we come back after the pre-design is done, then we would be able to give you informed decision as far as what the cost estimates would be for the base scope, as well as the secondary items and any information that we have in securing some funding that would be able to support those secondary items.
So they would be basically like a menu check
Correct.
kind of
Yes.
thing? Okay. And why is the reconstruction of sidewalks at bus stops and existing curb ramps considered a secondary element separate from the sidewalk repair base elements?
What we have found is we were looking at really identifying, I believe it was back in here, but some of the relocation of the bus stops were triggering some of these sidewalk upgrades, and so that was not part of the original scope that we're looking at.
Okay. And what was the process by which streets were considered and selected for inclusion in this second round of the program? What was the criteria that we used?
The criteria that we are using is really the overarching tenet of the Complete Street program, which is to repair and reconstruct our streets, as well as address Vision Zero elements. So we looked at streets that had the worst PCI condition. So we obviously worked with Bureau of Street Services and identified what the pavement street conditions were, and we overlapped that or overlaid that information with Vision Zero. We looked at streets that were on the high injury network.
And what factors are going to be considered when developing the street selection scoping process for the future projects?
When we are looking at the future projects, we are really looking at a more comprehensive prioritization and scoring system. So some of the recommendations items that we are looking at for the scoring system, as you mentioned, opportunities with other overlays with metro projects, other capital developments. We're going to look at, to be consistent with the Mobility 2035, looking at if these streets are on the transportation enhanced network, if they are on the pedestrian enhanced network, bikeway networks. And so all of these items will be identified to select a very good candidate for our next round of streets, as well as funding opportunities.
kind of bleeds into item 4, what we're about to talk about. But let's continue with this item. Colleagues, Mr. O'Farrell.
First of all, thank you for your excellent work along Temple. It's never looked better, and I look forward to it wrapping up in September. That's terrific. And this is a great program overall, and my office loves working with BSS and Department of Transportation. We haven't been briefed yet on the plans for Highland or La Brea, which we share with Council District 4. So I would definitely support moving forward contingent upon briefing my office first.
Absolutely.
I love that you're so ready to move forward, but just have a check-in with us first because, we support your efforts. We just want to see some details first.
Okay.
And then a question I have, and I ask about this frequently, and Adele, this might be for you, but the cool pavement, when might we see a more robust example of the cool pavement process for a major boulevard, for example, for a lot longer than just a little pilot project? And I know there's an expense issue and there's also a sort of a technology refinement issue. But when do we get to see our first major boulevard done entirely in cool pavement? And could you explain, Adele, the environmental benefits of cool pavement while you're at it?
Great. Adele Hashkuli, General Manager of Streets LA. Cool pavement is actually part of the mayor's new Green Deal and also part of the direction from council to really make the city sustainable. And this is our commitment to making the city safe and also to create shade, whether it's through trees, through cooling the environment, plus also putting transit stops. And all that is in our shop. We're working hard on it. We are leading the country in our cool pavement research and installations. And in June, we installed the first 3 neighborhood cooling projects, one in the Chairs district, and in the valley we had 3 locations, the hottest places, and the temperature differential was over 20 degrees, 25 degrees. And the testing that we are continuing to look at is how long they stay, the impact on the wear and tear on the material, and we're testing it as part of a whole effort. The new thing that we brought in also is the black slurry that we use to preserve streets. We're able to work with our partners to develop something that's basically a cool slurry, working with Keith and the staff and everyone. And we applied it in one of your streets in your district, and Marguerite by school. And that's something also we're testing. But I think what we are looking at is eventually expanding it, but we have to do it in a very systematic way that we're not really going ahead of ourselves. And I want to also put it as part of a cooling package that has multiple components. It's not just cool pavement. Imagine if we combine cool pavement with trees and transit stops in a corridor that is the hottest corridor that we have, the highest transit users, the highest pedestrians. We can really make a huge difference. So you're going to see something. We're working very hard with Keith on identifying a large street that we can apply the cool slurry. We are testing it right now. We're learning more from the ones that we applied in your district to really look at the impact. So we're going to be working hard. I think we have already some resources in the budget, thanks to you, the council and mayor, for putting resources in the budget for cool pavement and continuing this effort. So you're going to see a lot more expansion. We have, Greg Spots has been leading the way. Actually, we have the most media coverage nationally and globally was on cool pavement. There's so much interest in it, and we're leading the way. And I know that with the city and with the climate change, we are projected to see in 40 years, the days that have 95 degrees almost tripling in LA, especially in the San Fernando Valley. So we need to do something to make the city safer. And I'm glad that we're leading the way, all of us together. We're putting things together, and it's part of a whole package, not just cool pavement. But what cool pavement does is the heat that comes in is not stored in the black asphalt. And when people use the streets at night, usually if you have black asphalt, it's emitting back all that heat and becoming hot. So we're hoping by putting the cool pavement, the pavement is not absorbing the heat. Also, at some point at night, that you're not going to create a environment that's very hot outside. And hopefully we're hoping that the energy at home will be much less, and also the experience of people going out and becoming healthy and walking becomes better. So really we're excited about this effort. We'll continue to partner with your committee, with council and the mayor, and I'm excited that we're going to be doing these big projects, but I think it's going to be gradual, step by step, to ensure that we have success and we're doing the right thing.
I think it's stunning. You said 20-degree differential.
Yes.
In some instances, that could be a matter of between life and death, literally.
That's correct.
I know Marguerite is a small, not often used street in Glassell Park, so it's a fraction of what a major boulevard would be. But I think that with your leadership and the city's leadership, we should be motivated to really just accelerate the experimentation on cool pavement. Another example is one summer ago in early July when we had that record-breaking heat event. On my street where I live, it was 116 degrees on the street that had been recently slurried. And the temperature outside was only about 106, but the temperature there was 116. So I think we can't underestimate the importance of fast-tracking this technology to the greatest extent possible, and even coming back with us on budget allocations for something like this. And I would argue that the very first major street pilot project, and I hope we can lead to that in the coming, not several years, but maybe a year from now, would be in the San Fernando Valley, where the heat events are much more pronounced. I would suggest that that's where the first one should go. We should start mapping out what that could look like in terms of your future Complete Streets program. Thank you.
Making the valley cool again. Yes. And
the valley has been cool since you've been council member.
There you go. No, but it is amazing. I've gone out there with a heat gun and Adele and other folks to test it. And even though they're saying 20, that's the conservative. You can find spots where it's a 30-degree difference between the blacktop and the cool street. And the question is, and we're testing this with the getting cool multiple streets, is can that change the ambient air and not just the surface temperature of the street? So it's great stuff, and it's nice to see that we're on the cutting edge. The first street in public street in the nation tested was right here in Los Angeles. Mr. Drew, any questions on this? Okay, great. Then I'm going to recommend that we approve the recommendations in the July 31 joint report. Seeing no objections, that will be the order. Say it again? Yes, contingent, and with the instruction to brief the relevant council offices on the streets in their district. Moving us to item 4. Mr. Santra, do you want to, we're going to present on this. I guess we kind of talked about it in the last, but, or, what's that? We approved 4, actually. We approved it on consent, and that, so that's good. It was an extension of 3, and 4 was basically the direction to come up with the system of gradings. So that'll move us to item 5. Mr. Espinosa, would you please read that into the record?
Item number 5 is report from the Bureau of Street Services relative to the California Environmental Quality Act, or CEQA appeal, by the Friends of West Wando Drive for a tree removal permit issued for 10034 West Wando Drive.
Good afternoon, committee chair and committee members. I'm Tim Tyson of Bureau of Street Services, Streets LA. I'm going to provide a little background on the project. The project is located at 10034 West Wanda Drive in Council District 5. It involves constructing a 2-story single-family residence with a basement of 2 retaining walls and 2 retaining walls on a 4,900 square foot lot. The building footprint is approximately 1,500 square feet, and the interior building space is approximately 3,238 square feet, including the basement. The project involves grading and exporting 954 cubic yards of soil and related improvements. It is surrounded on 3 sides by similarly developed home sites. The project includes removing 3 coast live oak trees, and this requires a permit to remove protected trees and replant. and replacing those 3 trees with 12 new trees, which is the ratio of 4-to-1 under the city's protected tree ordinance 177404. The project also removes 6 old California black walnut stumps. The stumps have limited shoot growth and were previously cut since they died from disease, poor health, or drought. The stumps do not qualify as protected trees under the city's ordinance. The project avoids and protects the remaining 4 existing trees on the site. The 12 new replacement trees will fully cover the remainder of the property with tree canopy in years to come. On March 7, 2018, the project was heard and approved by the Board of Public Works. The project was considered exempt from CEQA. On March 14, 2018, the Director of Street Services issued a permit to the applicant. The applicant then removed the trees and stumps. Other building and grading permits and certificates were issued in June of 2018. After that, no appeal was filed until August 31, 2018, which is 177 days after the Board of Public Works approved the project. A group identifying itself as the Friends of West Wanda Drive submitted this appeal to City Council based on CEQA. Staff has prepared a report that is included in the council file responding to that appeal. As stated in the report, staff recommends the following. First, note that the cover sheet on the report has typographical errors and its recommendations. The correct recommendations are page 2 in the staff report, and I will read those recommendations in now. Deny the appeal. 2, determine based on the administrative record that the project is exempt from CEQA under CEQA guidelines sections 15303 and 15332, and there is no substantial evidence demonstrating any exception listed in CEQA guidelines section 15300.2, and instruct the Bureau of Street Services to file a notice of exemption with the county clerk. Number 3, determine that the municipal code does not allow an appeal of the board's decision to issue a protected tree permit, and the appellant's sole right to appeal exists under CEQA. Number 4, sustain the Board of Public Works approval on March 7, 2018, and the Director of Street Services permit to remove protected trees and replant permit number 1-745954991, dated March 14, 2018. And that concludes my report.
Great, thank you. We have a number of public comment cards on this. We're going to start with the appellant, followed by the applicant, and then public comment. So, or actually followed by public comment and then the applicant at the end. So, is the appellant Jamie Hall here?
May I first ask for some clarification on procedure? How much time am I going to be given for this presentation?
City Attorney, in terms of the, is this normally it's 1 minute, but because the appellant is that?
Yeah, Mr. Hall, I've heard many of his presentations. I think
5 or 6 minutes is normally what we would get if we were at Plum, so I'd ask to have a similar amount of time.
We don't have exact.
I think that's
we don't have the same rules as Plum.
Sure,
but
understood.
But we'll go ahead and give you 5 minutes.
Okay, great. Thank you very much.
That means we'll also go ahead.
My name is Jamie Hall. I'm a land use and environmental attorney with Channel Law Group. I represent Friends of West Wanda Drive. I first want to address the issue about the, quote, unreasonable delay that's referenced in the staff report. There was nothing unreasonable about the filing of the timing of the filing of this appeal. The city doesn't have a CEQA appeal ordinance, so you default to the Public Resources Code, which gives you 180 days to file an appeal. We filed within 177 days, which was within the time frame. So I just sort of think that was a red herring, so I just want to put that out there. The appeal is also not moot simply because the applicant went in actually prior to the issuance of his building permits and removed the trees. And that's a whole nother issue that you should think about, whether or not you want to validate that kind of behavior. The reason why it's not moot is that what we're dealing with here is the loss of habitat. And that loss of habitat can be mitigated still at this point, notwithstanding the fact that the trees have been removed. And additionally, the 6 walnuts that are allegedly just stumps are not stumps at all. If you were to go out there and look at the site today, you would see trees that have surprisingly rebounded, very tall, alive, bushy, and full. So you can require mitigation for the loss of those 6 walnut trees. So there's still a remedy here. This appeal is not moot. I also want to say here, what we're dealing with here is whether or not the Class 32 or the Class 32 exemption is applicable. In order for the Class 3 exemption to be applicable, the project can't be located in a particularly sensitive environment. So if the project is located in an environmental resource of critical concern that's been precisely mapped, designated, and officially adopted pursuant to law, you cannot deem this project exempt from CEQA. So this project's located in the Santa Monica Mountain Zone, and the legislature in 1980 declared that the entire zone is an environmental resource of critical concern. The staff report completely poo-poos that and says that also the zone is not precisely mapped. It's clearly precisely mapped. It's in the act itself. The city may not like the way the legislature chose to map it, but that doesn't mean it's not precisely mapped. And I'd also like to note that the Santa Monica Mountains Conservancy has submitted a letter. They completely dispute this. They are a state agency that's owed great deference, and they have specifically stated in their letter that the zone is an environmental resource of critical concern, and it is precisely mapped. So we dispute that. The other thing I'd like to note is that the city's own maps demonstrate that this is an environmental resource of critical concern. In the city CEQA Thresholds Guide, there's actually biological resource areas, and this property is in a mapped biological resource area in the city CEQA Thresholds Guide. The city has also produced maps recently pursuant to the Wildlife Pilot Study Area. This project was within that area. And the next question then becomes, if you're in this particularly sensitive environment, can you show a fair argument that the project may have a significant impact on the environment? Today we submitted an expert report from Dr. Travis Longcore, a professor at UCLA, and he specifically noted that there are potentially significant environmental impacts that are not mitigated through the city's CEQA, through the city's protected tree ordinance. And the main issue, and this is a nuance, but you need to think about it. This is a walnut woodland and a live oak vegetation community. And so when you're reducing the overall area, the habitat loss. So the city's CEQA, city's protected tree ordinance only requires replacement of trees. It doesn't deal with the lost habitat. So there are potentially significant adverse impacts that are not mitigated through the city's protected tree ordinance. Let's see here. Also want to talk about the Class 32 exemption, which is recently cited by the city as a justification for doing no environmental review. That you can't use the Class 32 exemption because of the fact that the Southern California black walnut is a threatened species. In order for the Class 32 exemption to apply, the project must have, quote, no value as habitat for rare, protected, or endangered species. The Southern California black walnut is a threatened species. I have here a scientific journal article entitled Endangered Plant Communities of Southern California. This was from 1989, and it clearly states that the black walnut meets the criteria to be deemed a threatened species under the Public Resources Code, and you don't actually have to be on the official list in order to be a threatened species. So with that, I will conclude, and I would urge you to grant the appeal.
Thank you very much. We now have a number of public comment speakers, 1 minute each, starting with Francisco D. Ianni, followed by Jeremiah Kellman.
Good afternoon. My name is Francesco Diani. I'm a neighbor of the lot. I live directly opposite the lot in question. First of all, I'd like to thank you for the opportunity to have us air our concerns. I'll reiterate the goal that we're trying to achieve here, which is really to make sure that the project respects the environmental norms and that the appropriate mitigation measures are being taken as defined by the processes that you guys have laid out. The first point I'd like to highlight is basically that the street that the lot is on is a substandard street, and one of my neighbors will come up later and go a little bit more in depth into that point and the concern that that raises. The point that I would like to highlight specifically is really around the fact that no proper analysis really, as was laid out by Mr. Hall earlier, was done to evaluate the impact that cutting down these trees would have on the environmental situation there. Just to give you a bit of color so that you can picture.
Just finish up because your time expired. So
okay, understood. Yeah, so
finish the thought.
Habitat, there's a family of deer that lives there. There's coyotes, multiple wildlife, birds, squirrels, etc. And the trees, as was mentioned earlier, have actually sprouted up again, 6 to 10 feet. So this is not insignificant. Appreciate the time. Thank you so much.
Next, we have Jeremiah Kellman, followed by Nicole Miner.
Hi, I'll try to talk quickly. I also live on the street. I'll say I'm not against development, but it's not often we have an actual opportunity to do something that has a real impact on the environment. I heard earlier green deals being mentioned. We actually live on the edge of real environmental habitat. That's the Southern California, Santa Monica mountain range. If you look at all the properties on our street, you'll see, like mine, where I have over 10,000 square feet of property, we're using 20% of it. Okay, this with the basement's using 80%. The reason why everybody in our street's using about 20% of our property is because we have woods behind us. If you look at the protected species, we have sycamores, walnuts, oaks, as well as elderberries, which are on the list to become protected. This is a unique thing. This isn't one oak in the middle of Westwood. I would also really like to emphasize, because people talked about the walnut stumps, which there's no proof were diseased. The report provided none. Just before my time, I know my time's running up, and let me finish this. I urge you to take a look at what this plot looks like today with these trees. They're definitely protected. Even before the cutting occurred, their expert acknowledged that these should be protected. They just provided no remediation for it. They're definitely now huge. They're trees. They're healthy. And these are extremely unique. It's not just an oak. This has a big impact.
Thank you. Nicole Miner, followed by Ira Moretsky.
Hi. Thank you for hearing us today. My name is Nicole Miner. I'm president of the Benedict Canyon Association and vice president of the Bel Air Beverly Crest Neighborhood Council. The entire Benedict Canyon community and the area encompassing all the hillsides of Santa Monica Mountains, the Bel Air Beverly Crest Neighborhood Council is behind this appeal. This particular property is a prime example of what can go wrong when people decide to build an unbuildable lot and don't understand what they're going to do to the environment by so doing. I will also add that the endangered species of owls also habitate in that area. This is it's a travesty to the hillsides. People don't understand the hillsides and should pay more attention to what they are approving if they're going to decimate the certain areas of these hills. This is a corner lot. This is not an average lot. Due to technology today, they can engineer it to make it work, but it doesn't work. It doesn't work for the hillsides, for the canyons, for the Santa Monica Mountains, or for the rest of us. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Ira Moretsky, and then after that we have the applicants, or the applicants.
Hi, my name is Ira Moretsky, and I am a 29-year resident on West Wanda Drive. My concern is the fact that we live on a substandard street with spots on the street being as narrow as 15 feet wide. I don't feel that a proper analysis has been done environmentally regarding not only the impact that it has, but also the public safety issue based on the fact of construction trucks trying to maneuver back and forth on a substandard street. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next we have the applicants, Armin Melikonins and Christina Kropp. So you have 5 minutes to split between the two of you, however you both wish to do that.
Sure. Why don't I start? Okay. Good afternoon, council members. Christina Kropp of Luna and Glushan here on behalf of Armin and Carla, the owners of the property. If we get to it, I'll let my client explain a little more of the factual circumstances leading to this appeal. But let me stress, on March 7th, 2018, the Board of Public Works approved this tree removal. On March 14th, 2018, UFD Forestry issued the permit. Thereafter, legally and complying with all conditions, the owners of the property removed the trees. 177 days later, this appeal was filed. I know some of the council members here know, they know my firm, they know me. We represent neighbors all the time. I represent environmental groups. There is nothing other than delay that is trying to be accomplished by this appeal. There is nothing else that this council can do. The walnut stumps, the twigs coming off the walnuts, they're not protected. The substandard street issues, they're not before you today. The only question before you today is whether the categorical exemption was adopted properly. And it was. This appeal is a paper appeal. It is not substantiated by any evidence. You have here a staff report that points all that out, but I will note again, the walnut stumps are not protected. The twigs are not protected. They're not before you today. The fact that the owners of this property complied with the protected tree ordinance and are going to abide by the ordinance to replace the trees as required by urban forestry is not an unusual circumstance in and of itself. The fact that the property is mapped in a very high fire hazard zone and the Santa Monica Mountains Conservancy map, that in and of itself is not an unusual circumstance. Under the appellant's reasoning, I mean, the fact that this property is in an RE15 zone would render it an unusual circumstance. The fact that it's in a hillside would render it an unusual circumstance. They have failed to provide one scintilla of evidence that the fact that the property is in a high fire zone or in a hillside zone or in a Santa Monica Conservancy map zone renders it unusual. Just the mapping is not enough. That is the way that CEQA is interpreted by cities, by counties, and by the courts. They've claimed noise, geology, soils impacts. As you see in the staff report, none of this is substantiated. Again, I have great respect for friends of West Wanda and the appellants here. There's no substance to this appeal. They cite two different projects in the city where impacts have been found. Impacts on other project sites do not equate to impacts on this site. They claim that the replacement trees are horticulturally unsound, that they're going to be impacts to other trees. That's all unsubstantiated. Our clients are seeking to build their home. They've been delayed by a year and a half now, simply because they are complying in full with the city's protected tree ordinance and all of the conditions that are being imposed by urban forestry that are, again, not before you today on appeal. And I'll give Armin 1 minute to follow me up. Thank you.
Hi there. I just wanted to introduce myself, Armin Melkonians, as the owner. I'm also a licensed civil engineer and have worked on many projects throughout the city of Los Angeles. Hillside specifically is my forte. What I see here, I just want to reiterate, it is delay. During our permit process, our neighbors were involved with talking to our plan checkers. They were sending videos of UPS trucks backing up and turning around on the street, everything that had nothing to do with our project. When we first bought the lot, our neighbor came over when I was doing the survey. They said, we looked into buying this lot. We didn't think anything was possible to build here, so we didn't buy it. The other neighbor said that, why are you going to build here? We bought our lot because we like to look at your lot. It was on the market. They had an opportunity to buy the lot. They could have gotten together instead of getting together and paying legal fees to buy the lot if they wanted to protect it. But as the landowners, we're doing everything by right. We're doing everything through the system legally. and using the permit process and going through everything that needs to be done to make sure that it's done correctly. This has delayed us. It's caused us an extra year of now rental. It's caused the market conditions have changed. For our financing is going to be more difficult at this time. And it's time we put this to bed and let us please build our house. So I urge you to deny the appeal and allow us to have the home that we designed and we want to live in. Thank you.
Thank you. I have a couple of questions for staff on this item. Tim? Couple things. And I want to give you a chance to respond to some of the things that were said, but one of the things that was said was that the trees were cut down before the permit was issued, and I was under the understanding that the trees were cut down after the permit was issued. Do you have the answer to that?
My understanding is that I didn't go there when they cut them down, but they were cut down after the permit was issued. They had to pay fees for the permit. They had to sign the necessary mitigation plan that they would replant the other trees, and they have to bond the replacement trees so that they actually will survive for 3 to 5 years.
And just in general, this problem of having these appeals come in so late hopefully will be mitigated because we have some in the future. We have legislation coming through to try to set timeframes on that. But unfortunately, at the moment, there are no timeframes, so we end up with cases like this. Now, question, given that the trees have already been removed, what would happen if the council upheld the appeal versus denying the appeal? What would physically happen on the ground? Anything?
Well, you better answer the legal issue.
Deputy City Attorney Stephen Martin. I guess part of that's a legal question as far as what the process would be.
I mean, you can't put them back.
Yeah, obviously the trees are cut. The question would just be what can be done. I mean, additional analysis, it would be additional work.
If they were not allowed to build their home, they would still have to replant all 12 trees and take care of them for 3 to 5 years.
So effectively, there'd be no difference on the ground either way. I mean, it's just getting to what is the point of the appeal is if nothing's going to change on the ground. So it's not about a different outcome as far as the trees go. Is that correct?
That's correct, Councilman.
Okay. Was the property owner allowed to remove the trees immediately after the issuance of the tree removal permit? How long did they have to wait?
Upon the issuance of the permit, they've already paid the necessary fees and the bonding fees. As soon as they're issued the permit, they're good to go with removing the trees.
Okay. And under the new CEQA appeals process the committee approved, would the property owner have been required to stay the tree removal for a set waiting period? Under the new process, they would, I would assume. But that process is not in effect yet.
I'm sorry, could you?
So I was just emphasizing how this is going to be different in the future because under the new process, there would be a stay after you get the permit.
Once the appeal is filed, there would be a stay for that issuance of the permit.
Right.
So it would stay in that.
But that was not in effect, and that.
Correct. That was not in effect at the time the board approved the issuance of the permit, and then the permit was issued.
Right. And then, did you have any other responses to some of the comments that were made?
Yeah, I can respond about stump regrowth. Stump regrowth is not viable regrowth. It grows on the base of the tree. They're called suckers, and they're called water shoots. And when they grow, they're weakly attached new growth to that stump. And as many of them grow around the stump, they will compete for the space on that part of the stump and break each other off as they grow. So, it's added up cumulatively at 4.5 feet above the ground. They're talking that they're real tall now, 10 feet, whatever. But we don't consider stump regrowth to be a viable tree anymore. The tree initially died. The tree was cut down, and now you have root shoots coming up. It's not the same as the tree was before.
Thank you. Colleagues? Mr. O'Farrell.
How many trees in all were removed with the permit? And you mentioned coastal oaks and black walnut.
There were 3 coast live oaks that were removed with the permit.
Total, three Coast Live Oaks. I believe that nothing has ever been built on this lot before, from the comments I've heard, correct?
I believe that is correct.
No structure's ever been on this lot. Let's see, while you're here, what's the square footage of the lot?
The 4,009 square feet.
That's the entire lot. And I know that this decision isn't made based on anything other than the tree removal, but what's the square footage of the design of the home?
The home, it says the building footprint is approximately 1,500 square feet. The interior building space, because it's a basement and 2 stories, is 3,238 square feet. So
what's the footprint?
The footprint is 1,500 square feet.
Okay, and you mentioned the trees replacement. How many trees must replace the ones removed, and do they need to be in the protected species category?
Absolutely. There are Coast Live Oaks, and there's 12 24-inch box trees. They'll go around the perimeter of the property.
On site? On
site.
And lastly, since we're dealing with a fairly small footprint and a fairly small lot, I would ask if the design of the home, if consideration was made in incorporating the existing protected trees in the design of the home.
Yes, Councilman, all that was considered back before it went to board. We have all the plans, all the maps, all the planting plans, and all of that.
Were other protected species that are on the lot, so will other protected species on the lot remain?
Yes. And some up at the very top of the lot that they're not going to touch. And there were many trees that were what we call property line trees or next to the property line that are also not being.
Do you have the number of that inventory?
I do.
So 3 protected ones removed.
And I believe it was 4 other trees that are staying, 3 Coast Live Oaks and 1 Southern California Black Walnut.
Okay. Thank you.
So they'll be adding 12 more trees to that.
Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So basically, if we grant the appeal, if we uphold this appeal, then it basically stops the project, right?
I would think that would be yes. It would likely go back to Board of Public Works.
And what does I mean, I read the appellant's letter. What does the appellant want besides granting the appeal? Is there any other compromise, resolution?
That's a difficult question for me to answer, and I think staff to answer as well, because I don't.
I'm assuming there was discussion. There was no discussion?
There has not been discussion, and I'm not aware of the applicant also talking to the appellant.
Do we have any direction or a letter from Council District 5?
We do not. I do not believe that Council District 5 has taken a formal position.
So, I've worked with both sides on this issue in my own district. And this is why for urban forestry, we try to augment their staff. We're trying to get a biologist on staff, as well as arborists and you name it, so we could have a more robust team over there at urban forestry. And the neighborhood council and many of the community groups that are present today, my office has worked closely with them on numerous occasions. Unfortunately, my office had to deal with situations similar to this, where in some cases I sided with the department, other cases with the community, and in many cases we were able to resolve this before it even got this far. So I just feel and this is why we're doing that CEQA, reforming our CEQA appeals process, as well as we're installing things like the hillside construction regulation zones and all these other things. And this is one of those if you damned if you do, damned if you don't situations where if we grant this appeal from what I'm hearing, because what I like what I'm hearing, I grant the appeal, basically we permitted these legally to cut it down. So basically we're just going to see ourselves with another lawsuit from the applicant. And if we deny the appeal, I mean, I just don't feel I have enough information. I'd like a little bit more, and I would love an opportunity for the two parties to try to come to a compromise or resolve the situation, because I know many times that we have in my district, and I don't want to overstep on an issue that I'm recently learning, and I've worked with Tim Tyson on way too many of these cases where I know you guys are very thorough. So I would ask Mr. Chair if it would be possible, and at that same time I do not want to delay this any longer because it seems like 177 days and it's been long enough. Is there an option to possibly just pass it along to as a chair's report to the city council?
Yeah, Mr. Drew,
Yeah.
I appreciate that. Even though I'm inclined to deny the appeal, I hear what you're saying, and we can move it forward without a recommendation so that it will not be delayed at all. It will go to council without a formal recommendation,
and that'll still afford some time.
That'll afford the time between now and when we get to council. We don't have to take it to council right away. Mr. Caretz can work with the parties and see if there's any issues to be had, and then it would move to council without a recommendation, and we would vote on it at that point. So I'm happy to oblige that, and without objection, that will be the order. Okay, moving on to, thank you very much. Moving on to item number 6. Mr. Espinosa, would you please
Item
read
number
that into the
6
record?
is a report from the city engineer and resolution relative to the temporary closure of a cul-de-sac walkway on Woodbine Street, northeasterly of Manning Avenue.
All right, Mr. Tyson from Streets LA. Did he disappear? For item 6, or this is for engineering? Why do I have Tim written down here? That's okay. All right, Edmund, you? That's okay. Sorry about that.
Good afternoon, Edmund Yu, Bureau of Engineering. Based on a motion from Council District 5 directing BOE to look at the feasibility of closing up this public walkway to mitigate crime and criminal issues. So based on the motion, BOE, we send out referrals to other city agencies and departments for comment. Normally for a criminal closure of this type, the key is LAPD because they have to come up with justification and support to close the public right of way to mitigate crimes. So in this particular case, engineering, we received a couple of communications from LAPD in supporting the closures. And we also received comment back from different city departments, and none of them really identify issues on the closing up of the public right of way. And also, we have received a substantial amount of communication from the public, both in support and in objecting to the closure. So basically, that's what BOE is reporting back to the council on this particular feasibility of this closure. That's our report at this time.
Great, thank you. And we have a number of public comment cards on this, and so I'm going to, actually my screen is not showing the comments, if you could fix that. So I'm going to call folks up, and what I would ask, each person gets a minute. If the people before you have said what you're going to say, please feel free to just say, I agree with the previous speaker, and just state your name, just because in the interest of time, we're running late, so I want everyone to have a chance to say what they're going to say, but if we could avoid just repeating the same thing, and it's just as effective to say, me too, my name, and that's okay. So with that said, I'm going to start with Jeremy Wagner, followed by Greg Geller.
Hello, gentlemen. My name is Jeremy Wagner. I live on the other side of the gate. I have a 9-year-old daughter. I'm assuming that you also have children. My daughter's lived her entire life. We use this gate to access 3 parks, our friends in the neighborhood, as well as her public elementary school. Closing this gate is absolutely an impact on us, and it is going to cause us undue hardship for accessing our neighborhood. Now, as a filmmaker, I'm a documentary filmmaker, there's a very clear message about this gate. One is that there are people on one side of the gate who do not want those of us from the other side of the gate. Now, it's all of our neighborhood. All right? What I would really appreciate is that we can continue to have this gate open. It's been open for decades and the entire life of my daughter. So I really would appreciate that the council does not send the message to my daughter that she is not welcome in her own neighborhood. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next, Greg Geller, followed by Stacy Geller.
Good afternoon, Council. Thank you very much for today. I do appreciate this very much. First of all, I want to say thank you very much to Allison Saunders and her husband Derek, who have done a remarkable job in doing the work that they do for our community, for the association. Allison is amazing. She has worked amazingly enough hours to do the work she's done with the council office and the LAPD to try to get closure for this gate. My parents bought their house in 1971. I grew up in this neighborhood. It was a very safe neighborhood. The area has dramatically changed. The robberies in our neighborhood have dramatically picked up. The homelessness has picked up. It's sorry to say that too many people have been being robbed in the middle of the night, people being broken into their homes in the middle of the night, especially when kids are sleeping. I had a meeting with the council office a couple months back, and hearing one of my neighbors talking about her son who now sleeps in his room at night with a locked door. That is unbelievable. I truly believe that having this gate closure is definitely important, especially for the homeowners in Cheviot, and to be able to protect our fellow homeowners. Keeping the gate open.
Just finish your thought. That's your time.
Thank you.
Thank you. Stacy Geller, followed by Vinod Maparnath.
Stacy Geller, thank you very much. To continue, we're in support of this gate, and we ask for your support as well. There are 3 similarly situated cul-de-sacs. The cul-de-sac on Edith Street, which is the next street over, was previously approved for the gate. We're asking for the same request on Woodbine. What happened on Edith is that their street, the gate was installed, so the pedestrian traffic and crime that they used to get on their street has now filtered over to our street. There's still access to the neighborhood. We're not trying to keep anybody out. There are still plenty of streets. This is a walkway. The streets are all still public. People, whoever wants to come in is welcome to come in, but we're trying to reduce some of the traffic that we're getting now that the Edith Street gate was installed, and we're trying to protect the residents from some of the crime. There's an entrance to the 10 freeway right on the other side. We're really just trying to protect in any way we can the residents on our block. Thank you.
Thank you. Vinod Maparnath, followed by Jane Matsumoto.
Vinod, hi. Mr. Chair, I have a couple procedural items. One is I have a couple sets of documents that were not in the City Council file I'd like to submit.
Please.
Second thing is a procedural item. I'd like to request 2 minutes because our counterpart got 2 minutes at the very beginning.
I'm sorry, it doesn't work that way.
Okay.
When you sign up for multiple, hold this time, please. Thank you. When you sign up for multiple items, then you get 2 minutes, but when you're on each item, you get 1 minute.
But I don't think she's speaking for multiple items, or are you? Okay. Okay, fair enough. My name is Vinod Mapranath. I oppose the walkway closure. I live on Manning Court. In the beginning, we invited our neighbors on Woodbine Street into our homes. The response was, no one on Woodbine wants to discuss with you. We only care about our block. I described the crimes we have. The response, your block can move somewhere else, and tenants should not have access. Does this sound familiar to the national news? Not a good news story for LA or the City Council. We are homeowners with children ages 2 and 4. Our cars were broken into. Human feces, liquor bottles, next to my daughter's room. Homes broken into. But this is a public street. The same crimes affect them as they do us. Exhibit B to the council file is not correct, which I submitted a revision. So this is Exhibit B1, which we've submitted, which has 100 signatures from 11 apartment buildings, the Nazareth House. They all object. The LAPD letter that I've included in the...
And just finish your thought. Your time
The
is up.
LAPD letter Exhibit C, which I have included, it stated only a slight increase of crime. We asked, and LAPD emailed us staff a crime map, which is Exhibit C. Not a single crime on Woodbine Street in the last 10 months. Not a single crime.
Thank
so
you.
where is the data that supports this closure? Thank you.
Okay, next Jane Matsumoto, followed by Steve Root.
Good afternoon. My name is Jane Matsumoto. My husband Terry and I have lived on Manning Court for 31 years. We have spent our careers in the public sector working in public transportation and have relied on access to Commuter Express Line 341 on Woodbine. Public policy relies on sound staff analysis and recommendations. The staff report citing increased criminal activity, including reference to homelessness, as a contributing condition has not been substantiated. As a former staff of a public agency, Terry and I feel very strongly that staff findings and analysis is paramount for you to make sound decisions. Moreover, related to Vehicle Code 21101.4, the state Supreme Court case ruled it has long been established that city and county governments do not have unbridled authority to close or otherwise obstruct the streets within their jurisdiction, since the street belongs to the general public and state law prompts local law on how they are to be regulated and restricted. The use of highways for purposes of travel and transportation is not merely a privilege, but a common and fundamental right of which the public and individuals cannot rightfully be deprived. I will just simply close by saying the benefit of just one block or the limited people in the country club section versus the immediate neighborhood needs to be considered.
Thank you. Okay, Steve Root, followed by Betsy Hanscom.
Hi, Steve Root. I live also on Manning Court, been there for 23 years, and I oppose this closure on a couple of different grounds. The report by staff recommends closure pursuant to that state vehicle code that was just mentioned, based on supposed increase in crime. That code requires, quote, serious and continual criminal activity, but the report includes no data to support that claim. In fact, LAPD stats show precisely 0 reported crimes on Woodbine in the last 10 months. So where's the data to support the closure? The code also states that a closure must not adversely affect public safety on surrounding streets. If there is crime, what evidence is there that it's actually due to the gate, and what studies have been done to ensure that the closure won't simply divert that crime to our street, as the president herself and another person said happened with the closure of Edith. It supposedly drove crime to their street. This will now drive crime to our street. Second, the report argues without any supporting data that the closure will not adversely affect traffic flow, but as she said, there's 2 primary access points to public transit right outside that gate. It will access or impede traffic.
Thank you. And we're running up against a time limit, so I'm going to ask people to try to, if they can speak quickly, that would be ideal. Betsy Hanscom, and then the next person could just line up behind, followed by Shannon Pankratz, just in the name of time. So if Shannon could line up.
Good afternoon. I'm Betsy Hanscom. This is our neighborhood, which begins north of the 10. The proposed public access closure will drastically and negatively affect both the safety and quality of life of a large number of District 5 residents on tangible day-to-day basis. This is the only area of public streets and walkways we have to walk and for our exercise. If closed, residents would be forced to travel an additional half-mile round trip to simply access our neighborhood. This is unacceptable. It also poses 2 significant safety risks. Pedestrians would be forced to unsafe areas by Manning and National, and if any kind of health or other serious emergency would occur, there would be no access to quickly get back home or to help. The closure proposal. Can I just say the last sentence?
Just finish up real quick, please.
May I?
Your last sentence, yes.
Okay.
Go ahead.
The closure proposal does not meet the specific statutory elements required to state Vehicle Code 21101.4 of serious and continued crime, whether by number, frequency, or nature.
Great, thank you. Shannon Pankratz, and then if Josh Johnson could line up behind.
Hi. The
The public walkway is not the source of any and all purported crime, nor is there any evidence provided thereof. The code cannot be used for closing important public walkways solely based on perception of crime or for the purpose of creating a privatized subcommunity. The Homeowners Association has noted this before. There's fear of crime, and also in their own meeting notes, January, May, July, of September of 2018, this intent is made clear, again, not based on what the statute requires. And in these 2018 notes, which I would like to provide to the committee. In these notes, LAPD Senior Lead Officer, as well as Councilman Caretz himself, I'll just briefly summarize. Crime has gone down, specifically in the neighborhood. Property crime is flat year to year, with burglaries the same as 2017, no violent crimes. It's noted that Woodbine Gate, beyond the gate, they want their...
Thank you.
Sorry.
Thank you very much. Next, Josh Johnson, followed by Susan Bettolari.
My name is Josh Johnson. I live on Manning Court. Just reiterating what my neighbor said, we use that as an access point to the larger neighborhood, and closing it affects us. You know, it's just to explain the geography a little bit. It's the only flat kind of part of the neighborhood, so we use it to exercise. I use it for my kids on their scooters and bikes, and I don't really see how a 6-foot fence is going to suddenly stop crime in that area. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Susan Bettolari, followed by Paul Bettolari.
My name is Susan Betoulier, and my father built the apartment building at 3355 Manning Avenue in 1956. Several residents have lived there over 20 years and some over 30 years. Our building is on the corner of Manning and Woodbine and is across the street from the Woodbine Public Walkway. I've personally been using this public sidewalk for 60 years, and now as a senior, I use it daily with my husband for our exercise, and it would be detrimental to our health to be closed out of this safe and peaceful area for our walks. We live on top of Manning Hill, and Woodbine is the only flat area with sidewalks to walk on that's easily acceptable. My 94-year-old father's in a wheelchair, our son is handicapped, and they cannot travel safely down hills and traverse broken, raised sidewalks. There is no other alternative route they can safely use. If public access is denied and locked off, it would be violating the rights of persons with disabilities. The crime in the neighborhood has nothing to do with this walkway, and the exaggerated claims of gang activity are bogus.
Great. We're going to lose quorum at a certain time, so we really need to get people up and off. Paul Bettolari, followed by Steve Shipsky. We need to start the time as soon as I call the name.
Honorable council members, my name is Paul Betoulier. Our family has owned the apartment building at 3355 Manning Avenue on the corner of Woodbine for 63 years. Our property is within District 5. We believe the city has a fiduciary responsibility to fairly and equally protect the rights of all District 5 residents. The city must not take sides. We pay taxes to be an equal part of District 5 and should be entitled to walk on any sidewalk within the district. The current residents, along with Woodbine Street cul-de-sac, do not have privileged rights. They chose to buy their homes on this specific street and in this specific area with full knowledge that a 10-foot wide public right-of-way existed as it was and is clearly shown on the 1951 tract map. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much. Steve Shipsky, followed by Mike Greenspan. Or Mike.
Hi, everyone. Steve Shipsky. I live on Edith Street. I'm on the street that has a temporary closure in the gate. I have 2 small kids. Leading up to the gate closure, on almost a weekly basis, there were people using marijuana, drinking alcohol, breaking bottles in our specific, this little walkway. These walkways are inviting for people to do unsavory acts. It's not the problem isn't access. It's just these places are harder to regulate. They're harder for LAPD to see. So it's harder to just regulate the crime that happens. We live in a vibrant community. There's a lot of diversity. That's not the issue. What we can also do is we could provide all of the residents within a certain radius keys to access the gate. This isn't about excluding people that live in the community. It's about preventing crime. It's about preventing an incentive for people and escape routes. This isn't about exclusion. This is just about overall safety, and crime has gotten worse. Homelessness is worse. The drug problem is worse. We need measures to help the community. Thanks.
Thank you. Mike Greenspan, followed by Laurel Conroy.
Mike Greenspan. Now, I notice you use the word temporary, and I feel that's probably misleading. It sounds like this, in this case, it's going to be permanent, but we're just sugarcoating it and using the word temporary closure. Hey, call it permanent. At least you'd be honest with the people. I live in North Hollywood. We had a short-term closure on Lankershim, but that short-term closure was for about 2 years. It came to the point where businesses were ready to sue the city. So when we should be defining these periods of time. Temporary should be what, 1 month, 2 months, and then reopen it. If you need more time, come back before the committee. Now, this is not just a walkway or an alley or a street, but it's when you're closing something, then make it for a specific period of time instead of saying temporary. As far as the crime, hey, you homeowners, buy the brothers, Smith & Wesson. That stops crime.
Thank you. Laurel Conroy, followed by Mark Caldero.
Hi, everyone. My name is Laurel Conroy. I live on Manning Court, and I, too, object to the closure of Woodbine Walkway. I have a 1-year-old son. We take him on family walks there every day, at least one time a day. I think everybody on this side of the room stands with me when they say there's no statistical proof that closing a walkway like Edith improves the crime situation. This would adversely affect our neighborhood. It would cut us off from flat walkways, and we object strongly to this closure. Thank you.
Thank you. Mark Caldero, I apologize, followed by Morgan Lopez.
Hello, thank you to the committee. My wife and I live in an apartment on Club Drive, just 50 feet south of Cheviot Hills. They say this is not about exclusion, but it clearly is about exclusion. For a previous meeting on this issue with Paul Caretz, I obtained signatures from my entire complex opposing the closure, and at that meeting, the CCCHA president, Allison Saunders, referred to us as transients compared to the Cheviot Hills homeowners. My apartment complex was built at the same time in the 1950s as this public access right-of-way was contemplated. We've been a part of the same community and same neighborhood design in Cheviot Hills for 70 years. My family personally uses this access walkway for take my daughter to the library, to vote, and my wife used it to commute daily to her legal nonprofit on Skid Row, as do our neighbors. Painting apartment dwellers as transients is unfair, unkind, and wrong. Just because we don't have $5 million to bulldoze a gorgeous mid-century to build a giant white box with black trim doesn't negate our voices in the community. Thank you.
Thank you. Morgan Lopez, followed by Danielle Roque.
Hi, I'm Morgan Lopez. I live at 3328 Woodbine, the apartment that's just south of Manning Avenue. Our apartment building is adjacent to the I-10 freeway. Just as the occupants of the north side of the gate moved into their homes with the knowledge that the gate was open, we moved into our apartment partially because of the Woodbine walkway and the enhanced quality of life that it would provide. We require access to the neighborhood for use of the public sidewalks, which offer a safe, quiet space in which we can exercise, walk our dogs, and take walks for mental clarity. Myself and my husband have taken walks in this neighborhood every day for the past 2.5 years. We have enjoyed the sense of community it has provided, as we have become friendly with many of the neighbors in residence inside the gate. Additionally, we have never witnessed any signs of criminal activity of any kind while on these walks. It's for these reasons we would request to keep our gate open. Thank you.
Thank you. Danielle Roque.
Good afternoon. I'm Danielle Roque, a resident of 3328 Woodbine Street as well. I wholeheartedly concur with all of the previous points made by those wanting to keep the gate open. I moved into my home last fall on the recommendation of Morgan and her husband Will, as I'd experienced moments of feeling unsafe at my previous residence in another community, including an instance where I was followed home one evening while walking my dog. Having access to safe and quiet and tranquil public roads was my top priority as a single woman, and I very much advocate for leaving the walkway intact. Additionally, I wanted to share that I have witnessed residents on the north side of the gate utilizing the walkway as well, notably on Election Day, to visit the polling venue at Nazareth House. So I believe that any perceptions that residents north of Manning would not be negatively impacted by the closure would be misinformed. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. And then finally, we have a representative from Paul Caretz's office, Debbie Donner-Harris.
Good
afternoon, council members. Clearly, this is a little more complicated than your average closure, and we appreciate that, and we appreciate your time listening to both sides. The council member would like to find some kind of a compromise, and that's why he is supportive of a shorter closure than is normally recommended in these situations. Instead of an 18-month closure, he'd like to see if it's possible to have a 12-month closure so that there can be a measurement of whether it had a positive impact. I do want to point out, if you have questions, our amazing senior lead for this neighborhood is here, Officer Chris Baker, if anyone has questions about some of that data and where the police department stands. We understand that it's challenging, and we're trying to find that compromise, and we'll leave it to you if we can hopefully do that today.
Okay. Colleagues? So, it's a very difficult one. I don't like the idea of closing these walkways, but I also defer to our council member who represents the area. They know the communities better, and we need to move something forward, and that'll give us a little time before it goes to full council if there's anything else to work out. But we certainly would want to adopt the recommendation that you've put forward, which is to lower the time frame from 18 months to 12 months. So I'm going to recommend that we approve the Bureau of Engineering report dated June 25th, 2019, but as amended by recommendation A, which states a period of 12 months rather than 18 months. And then there's time for both sides hopefully to get together between now and when this comes to council if there can be any further changes. So without objection, that will be the order. Seeing no objection, that's the order. Mr. Espinosa, is there anything else on our agenda?
No, Mr. Chair.
Okay. This meeting is adjourned. Thank you.